If you're watching this, there's a good chance assisted living is already on your mind. Maybe for yourself, maybe for a spouse, maybe for a parent. And if you've started looking at prices, you probably felt that little knot in your stomach when you saw the numbers. 4,000 a month, 5,000, sometimes more. And then that quiet thought creeps in. What happens if this keeps going up every year? Today, I want to talk to you about something almost no one explains clearly before you sign on the dotted line. It's a single sentence buried inside many assisted living contracts. One clause. Most people skim right past it, but understanding this one line can mean the difference between feeling financially secure 5 years from now or quietly losing $50,000 without ever realizing how it happened. And we're not going to get technical or confusing, I promise. We're going to talk about this like two people sitting at a kitchen table going through paperwork together, making sure nothing sneaky slips by. So let's ease right into it. Picture this for a moment. You tour a beautiful assisted living community. The staff is warm, the rooms look comfortable, the dining area feels more like a restaurant than a cafeteria. You sit down with the sales counselor and they slide a paper across the table and say your monthly rate will be $4,200. That number sticks in your head. You do the math, you think, okay, I can manage that. But here's the part almost nobody stops to question. That $4,200 is not a promise, it's a starting point. And this is where the first quiet surprise shows up. Assisted living communities raise rates. Almost all of them do, sometimes every year, sometimes more than once a year. And the increase is rarely small, 3%, 5%. 7%. Over time, that adds up fast, faster than most people expect. Now, before we go any further, let me say this clearly. Rate increases by themselves are not the scam. Costs go up everywhere. Staff wages rise, food costs rise, utilities rise. That part is normal. The real issue is whether your contract puts any limits at all on how high or how fast those increases can go. Two people can move into the same building on the same day, into nearly identical apartments, and 5 years later, one of them may be paying tens of thousands more than the other, all because of one clause they either noticed or didn't. That clause is often called a price lock, a rate stabilization clause, or sometimes something that sounds harmless, like annual adjustment terms. The name doesn't matter nearly as much as what it actually says. Some contracts quietly give the community complete freedom to raise your rent by any amount at any time for almost any reason. No cap, no limit, no explanation required. If you sign that, you're agreeing to trust that increases will always be reasonable. And that word reasonable is doing a lot of heavy lifting. Other contracts, though, include a protection. They might say that your base rent can only increase once per year, or that increases are capped at a certain percentage, or that your base rate is locked for a set number of years. That difference alone can be worth $50,000 over 5 years, and that's not a dramatic YouTube number, that's simple math. Let me make it feel real. Imagine your starting rent is $4,000. If it increases by 5% every year, after 5 years, you're paying over $5,100 a month. That's more than $13,000 extra per year compared to where you started. Now stretch that across multiple years, and suddenly the money you thought would last comfortably is disappearing much faster than planned. Here's the part that catches people off guard. Sales counselors rarely lie outright. They just focus your attention on today's price. They talk about amenities, they talk about activities, they talk about peace of mind. They don't slow down and say, let's talk about what this looks like in year 3 or year 5. And many seniors don't ask, not because they aren't smart, but because no one ever told them this was something they should ask. Now, let me gently shift us to another angle that matters just as much. Some communities advertise something that sounds wonderful: price lock for life. That phrase alone has convinced thousands of people to sign contracts feeling safe and relieved. But price lock doesn't always mean what you think it means. In many contracts, the price lock only applies to the base rent, not the care fees. So while your apartment rate might stay steady, the cost for assistance with bathing, dressing, medication, or mobility can increase year after year without limits. On paper, they kept their promise. In reality, your monthly bill still climbs. This is why understanding the scope of that clause matters just as much as its existence. Does it apply only to rent? Does it include care levels? Does it exclude certain services? These details are rarely explained unless you ask directly. And this is where I want you to slow down and breathe for a second. None of this means assisted living is a bad choice. For many people, it's the right choice. It's safety, social connection, and relief for family members. But the contract is not just paperwork. It's the rule book that controls how much of your savings stays yours. Once you understand how these contracts really work, you start seeing patterns that were invisible before. There's something important that happens after the first year in assisted living, and most people don't feel it right away. The first year often feels calm, stable, comfortable. You're settled in, routines are set, and the monthly bill looks pretty close to what you expected. That's why what I'm about to share catches so many people off guard. Many of the biggest cost increases don't come from rent at all. They come from how your level of care is defined, adjusted, and quietly reclassified over time. Let's talk about that in plain language. Most assisted living communities separate your bill into two big pieces. One is the apartment, or base rent. The other is care, help with medications, help with bathing, help with walking safely, supervision. These are often grouped into levels, sometimes called tiers or points. On move-in day, they assess you. Maybe you're fairly independent. You get placed in a lower care level, and the extra charge feels manageable. What many people don't realize is how loosely those care levels are defined in the contract. In many contracts, the community, not you, not your family, not your doctor, has full authority to reassess your care level whenever they choose. That reassessment doesn't require a major health event. It can be triggered by something as small as a fall that doesn't cause injury, forgetting a medication once, or needing reminders a little more often. Suddenly, you're told your care level has increased, and with it, your monthly bill jumps by hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars. Now, here's where the price lock clause becomes either your shield or your blind spot. Some contracts include language that limits how much care fees can increase year over year. Others don't. Some allow unlimited increases based on care needs as determined by the community. That phrase sounds reasonable until you realize it gives them nearly complete discretion. And this is how two people paying the same rent end up with very different total bills. Let me paint a picture that feels familiar. You're doing okay, but you move a little slower than before. A staff member notices and writes a note. A month later, you're told your care level has changed. It feels minor, but the cost goes up $600 a month. That's over $7,000 a year. Multiply that across several years, and suddenly you understand where that $50,000 quietly disappears. Here's the part that stings a little, but it's important. Most families don't push back because they don't realize they can. They assume these decisions are fixed, medical, and non-negotiable. But often, the contract language gives the community far more flexibility than they let on, and far more than you might want. Now, let's gently shift to another subtle trick that shows up in many agreements. Some contracts advertise predictable increases. That phrase feels comforting. Predictable sounds safe, controlled, planned. But predictable doesn't always mean limited. In some cases, predictable simply means the community plans to raise rates every year. The amount? That's still open-ended. 3% sounds harmless until you remember inflation, care adjustments, and service fees are often stacked on top of that base increase. Some of the best price lock clauses don't look flashy at all. They don't say lifetime lock or guaranteed forever. They simply say that increases are tied to a specific index, or capped at a fixed percentage, or frozen for a certain number of years, regardless of care changes. Those boring-sounding sentences are often the ones that protect your savings the most. And here's something very few people are told. You can sometimes negotiate these clauses. Not always, not everywhere, but more often than most seniors realize. Especially if the community has vacancies, especially if you're flexible on move-in timing, especially if you're paying privately and not relying on insurance or assistance programs. You don't need to argue, you don't need to threaten. Sometimes all it takes is calmly saying, "I'm concerned about long-term affordability. How does this contract protect me from large increases over time?" Then pause. Let them answer. The way they respond tells you a lot. Now, there's one more quiet detail we need to talk about before we move forward, and it's one of the most overlooked parts of all. Many contracts include something called an exception clause. It allows the community to bypass price limits under certain conditions: rising labor costs, regulatory changes, market conditions, emergency situations. Some exception clauses are so broad they swallow the rule entirely. If a contract says increases are capped except when costs rise, regulations change, or the community deems it necessary, then the cap may not protect you at all. Almost anything can be justified under those terms. This doesn't mean every community abuses this clause. Many don't, but the contract gives them the option. And when budgets get tight, options get used. By now, you can probably feel the pattern emerging. It's not about one bad line or one good line. It's about control. Who controls the future cost of your care? You or the contract language? By now, you can probably sense that not all price lock clauses are created equal. Some look comforting but leak money over time. Others are written so quietly and plainly that most people miss their power entirely. This last stretch of our conversation is about recognizing the one clause that truly protects you and knowing how to use it to your advantage without feeling overwhelmed or intimidated. Here's the curiosity spark to keep in mind as we move forward. The most powerful protection in assisted living contracts usually isn't advertised, highlighted, or talked about during the tour. It's often a single sentence that limits how much your total monthly cost can rise, not just when it rises. That's the heart of the matter. The strongest contracts don't separate rent safety from care safety. They place a clear ceiling on total increases over time. Sometimes it's written as a percentage cap per year. Sometimes it's a fixed dollar limit. Sometimes it's a multi-year freeze that applies regardless of changes in care level. The wording varies, but the effect is the same. It puts a fence around your future costs. When you see language that says something like, "The resident's combined monthly charges shall not increase by more than," your ears should perk up. That's the sentence that stops slow financial bleeding. That's the one that turns assisted living from a gamble into a plan. Now, let's make this practical and reassuring, because contracts can feel intimidating, especially when you're already dealing with a major life transition. If you're reviewing a contract right now, or helping a loved one review one, don't read it like a legal document. Read it like a roadmap. Ask yourself a simple question as you go. Where does this protect me 5 years from now? If you can't find an answer, that's a signal, not panic, just information. And here's something empowering that many seniors don't realize. You're allowed to take the contract home. You're allowed to sleep on it. You're allowed to have someone else read it. There is no prize for signing quickly and no penalty for asking thoughtful questions. Sometimes the most important question you can ask is also the simplest. What is the maximum I could be paying here in 5 years if nothing goes wrong? Watch how that question lands. If the answer is clear and calm, that's a good sign. If it's vague or deflected, that's worth paying attention to. Let me gently share something encouraging. I've seen many seniors save tens of thousands of dollars, not by finding a cheaper community, but by choosing a clearer contract. 2 places may look identical on the surface, same food, same activities, same smiles, but one protects your future, and the other quietly drains it. And here's the emotional piece that matters just as much as the financial one. Peace of mind isn't just knowing where you'll live, it's knowing you won't be forced into hard choices later because costs ran ahead of your savings. A good price lock clause protects your dignity as much as your bank account. As we wrap this up, let me say this clearly and warmly. You are not being difficult by asking these questions. You are being responsible. You worked hard for your savings. It's okay to protect them. If you've already moved into assisted living and you're watching this, don't assume it's too late. Some communities are willing to revisit terms, especially if you've been a stable, respectful resident. It never hurts to ask for clarity or to request written explanations of how increases are calculated. And if you're still in the decision phase, you're in a powerful position. Knowledge at this stage could literally save you $50,000 over the next 5 years, not by cutting corners, not by sacrificing comfort, simply by choosing transparency. If any of this sounds familiar, or if you've had an experience with unexpected increases, I'd really love to hear about it. Share your thoughts or your story in the comments. Your experience could help someone else avoid a costly mistake. If you found this helpful, give the video a like so more seniors can see it, and subscribe to the channel for more clear, honest conversations about aging, finances, and protecting your independence. And remember this as you move forward. Getting older doesn't mean giving up control. With the right information and the right questions, you can make choices that support your comfort, your security, and your peace of mind for years to come. Here's to living well, wisely, and confidently at every age.